Good evening. Sorry for not being alive, but Colin's in hiding. Yes, this is episode 2 of the Brewgooders Beer and Comic podcast. How is everyone doing? How are you, Colin?
I'm not bad, but I've got a little eye infection, which is why we're not together tonight.
If you want to interact with us, this will be, obviously, we are aware that there is a watch party going on, and I'm going to try and place this. This will be placed up on the Facebook page later on, and you will be able to chat away on it, and we'd be able to feedback to you as well. Also, thank you to. I double checked this morning before, while I was doing my notes and stuff. But we were viewed on the Facebook. I don't know how many times it included, like the amount of times I watched bits and bobs when we were recording. But we were watched 263 times last week, and download. I'm just double checking it just now. But downloads on Podomatic were about 35, which means just under 300 folk were kind of paying attention and stuff. And then we're getting lovely feedback on all our different social media, which was really cool. So one of the things that we decided to do from last week is kind of cut back on how many beers we drink in a show, and that maybe slows the show down by about 20 minutes. But hopefully that'll improve sort of listener experience. I've got 2 beers. Have you got 2 beers, Colin?
I have 2 beers here.
We've got a whole review podcast on drinking and looking at things, and we have no visual, which is very off. Cool. What have I got? Right, would you like to open your first beer then? And I'll open my first beer, and we'll try and do it. We'll try and do it this way.
Okay. My first beer is Edinburgh Gold. It's from Stuart Brewing. Now, I did put up a Twitter poll the other day. I had 3 different beers to choose from. So I picked the top 2 that came out on the Twitter poll. So 51% wanted a review of Edinburgh Gold.
Wow, that's amazing. I saw that. Thanks to everybody that took part in that view, and it was nice. Stuart Brewing got sort of involved in the discussion as well, I think, which was quite amazing.
Yeah, they retweeted and stuff.
Yeah,
and,
that's amazing. Thank you for that.
Came on and were suggesting other beers from Stuart Brewing.
Okay. So
this is going to be interesting for me because I think they've been around for about 5 or 6 years, Stuart Brewing. And I remember tasting some of their beer. In fact, no, it's longer than that. It's nearly something like 15 years, actually.
Yeah.
And I had some of their beer many years ago, somewhere in Edinburgh, I think, or a little farm shop or something.
Yeah, I certainly see a lot of their stuff as sort of brewers go, particularly in our area of Scotland. You can get access to them in supermarkets and stuff, so that's quite amazing. That's
right. Mm-hmm. So back then, however long ago it was, I wasn't particularly keen on it. So I'm glad to see that they're still here, that they're growing. They've won some awards recently. So
Absolutely.
I'm interested to see what their Edinburgh Gold is like.
Cool. Talk us through it. Talk us through your beer.
Right, well, I've poured it. It's got a big frothy head on it. It's nice amber, golden colour, really.
Nice.
Yeah, not overly strong. Smell. The aroma's quite sweet, I would say. So let's give it a wee taste. Well, that is actually very pleasant. So quite hoppy. There's sweetness to it, I would say. I'm getting a sort of slightly, I don't know, what would it be? Caramelly, toffee.
Toffee? Oh, amazing. That's real good.
Ever so slightly. Not overly strong. It's quite refreshing. Yeah, I think that's rather pleasant. So considering, a few years ago I wasn't too keen on the stuff they had, I'm saying this is quite pleasant. So the advice we've been given is to actually have another beer which is even better than this, which is called Jack Back. That's what I'm look out for.
Awesome. That's
I'm going to take another little swig of this just to check it out. If you want to chat away for a moment.
Yeah. Well, while you're doing that, I open a beer. This is weird because usually we'll be sharing a beer. I went to the Caledonian craft beer merchant today in Dunfermline, and I happened to have my 3-year-old son with me, and I selected something that I'd seen them advertise on their Facebook and social media, which I will come to later on. But I did kind of draw a blank at what I also wanted to pick. So I actually left the choice up to my 3-year-old, who actually really likes the craft beer merchant shop. I think because of the kind of same things we talked about last week. It's like a wall of art when you go in. There's just so many beautiful looking. So he picked Tiny Rebel, who are a brewing company from Newport in Wales, and they've got a beer called Frambuzi, which is a raspberry sour framboise. Pardon my language. I've just poured it there now. It's very cloudy. It's in my pint glass, so it's really really dark red in the middle, verging on kind of a purple colour, and a nice head on it, and then it's sort of lighter as it comes to the surface on at the top, but also really light at the bottom of the glass as well. Just maybe the way the light's hitting it, but if I give it a smell of it, it's very overpoweringly raspberry, which I believe, if I look at the ingredients, is because the ingredients are water, malted barley, malted wheat, hops, and yeast, which are kind of standard, and then raspberry puree is the other included ingredient.
Okay, yeah, so you're expecting it to.
Yeah, so the raspberry, as you imagine, is very overpowering compared to some of the other. I take a drink.
When you taste it.
Yeah. That's a weird sort of. That's a. Yes, it's very raspberry.
Does it taste like an alcohol?
I'm finding it quite good drink. It's not very balanced. It's very sharp. I think that's the flavour they're going for. Obviously, it's a very summery beer. It's very summery. It is very refreshing actually. Not very.
What ABV is it?
4.3. 4.3.
I forgot to say mine is 4.8.
Yeah, of course. It's, as I say, it's not very balanced, but I don't think that obviously when they're using sort of Tiny Rebel as their brew, that they're maybe not going, they're going against the grain somewhat. So obviously balance is not what they're going for. So yeah.
Sure. So what does the label look like on that one then?
So it's a yellow. The background is yellow, and then there is the words Frambuzi is in like a kind of silvery black, kind of gunmetal kind of colour, and there's a small what's that small machine gun called? That's Uzi. Sorry, of course it's an Uzi because the beer's called Frambuzi. There's a silver and sort of gunmetal gun on Uzi on the side of the can that's shooting raspberries over the rest of the can.
One that your 3-year-old.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think he picked the gun because obviously if I look at it as it kind of would have been on a shelf, you wouldn't have seen that gun. You would have just saw the yellow and the pink raspberries. And I think yellow's his favourite colour, and he loves fruit. So that was a good choice. I'm not sure I would sort of. We talked about like one of the beers we had last week had banana in it, and we weren't massively a fan of it. I think that's possibly on that scale in terms of me. It's not my favourite beer I've ever tasted. I will finish it and it will be lovely, but yeah, it's funny because I spent quite a lot of time this week on holiday drinking beer and trying to get used to the lingo, and I've had a beer selected for me that doesn't fit any of it. The mouthfeel is like I've drank like a fizzy drink or like you said an alcopop. I don't think it's had much exposure to light. It hits the light. Actually, the colour is quite incredible, and there's nothing with regards to balance or that in it. And the bouquet is overpowering in one sort of sense, so it doesn't sort of meet the standards of which we would normally check beer at. But absolutely something I'm prepared to keep drinking as we go on. Would you like to start us off with a comic?
All right, yeah, comic. Yeah, I suppose we should have a look at comics. So I'm just going to comment that the Edinburgh Gold, the label actually, the artwork looks very much like a comic book. With a bit of artwork.
I thought that as well.
Big wide shot of Edinburgh with Edinburgh Castle in the background. There's big robot type character and lots of people in it. It's quite an interesting label.
I saw it. I think I was at you mentioned Edinburgh Gold, and I think I saw it in a Morrison's in Berwick upon Tweed, which is quite incredible in itself. I certainly saw it in just outside Dunbar. There's a Belhaven on their site, and I'm sure I saw it there as well. So I was interested to see what you think, because it is quite an accessible beer in sort of central Scotland to sort of southeast Scotland. So
quite right as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
A nice summery beer. Ideal for kind of lovely weather. So anyway, comics.
Yeah.
So my first comic of the week, I've gone for Star Wars: Age of Rebellion special.
Amazing.
So, there's a whole range of new Star Wars comics out, or coming out very soon, under this sort of label of Age of Rebellion, and they're featuring different characters' story arcs. So there's, at the moment, I think Princess Leia story arc is out, and this is the story, that one's the story of how she gets the bounty hunter outfit, bush outfit, so then she goes to rescue Han Solo from Jabba the Hutt.
Oh, cool.
So it's an interesting story I'd like to read. Another one is Grand Moff Tarkin. I think that's out now as well.
Yeah.
So some kind of backstory about him. And the feature one's out in May, I think, Han Solo, and another one about Boba Fett. But this is a special, so it's just Age of Rebellion special, and it's got 3 stories in it. So 3 short stories with the character IG-88, who was one of the bounty hunters along with Boba Fett. Mm-hmm. And there's a story of Yoda living in Dagobah.
Of course.
And kind of funny, amusing story. Well, actually, a bittersweet story, really, about Biggs Darklighter and Jake Porkins. So 2 of the famed pilots,
rebels, sure.
Pilots,
yeah.
And they're having a holiday.
Okay.
It's a nice bit of a bittersweet kind of story. So I should probably tell you a little bit about each story.
Okay.
So IG-88, if you remember him, he's the tall robot character. He only appears in Empire
Strikes Back.
A few seconds, really.
Mm-hmm.
And he never really moves. And you probably think it's a pretty dull character. But there have been a few comic books about him, and I think he's appeared in some of the Star Wars cartoon series as well.
Yeah, I think he's in Rebels, yeah.
Yeah, I think so. So he seems to be a really driven bounty hunter, very professional. Does like to do things by himself rather than as a team. So this is quite an interesting little story. Yeah, quite a good one. Interestingly, the artist on this is Casper Weingard. He was here in Dunfermline.
That's right, of course he was, yeah.
He's done the artwork on that. A good story, lots of action in it, neat twists and things, and a few different kind of aliens that you maybe haven't seen in the Star Wars universe before. So that's the first story, about IG-88. It's called The Long Game. The second story is The Trial of Dagobah, and it's set on Dagobah just before Luke Skywalker arrives.
Okay.
So we're following Yoda around, kind of, doing his kind of shopping to find some meat.
Get his bits and bobs from.
A little look around Dagobah and some of the creatures that live there, stuff that we never saw in any of the movies.
Mm-hmm.
Again, that's quite an interesting little story. I'm thinking who's the writer. Mark Guggenheim is the writer, and Ricardo is artist, and Bruno Sanchez that is cover artist. It looks great.
It's really nice.
Again, nice little story.
Yeah. Definitely, it's quite amazing that I think like a big sort of player in the comics is allowing or not allowing is offering opportunities for sort of writers and artists to put this sort of stuff together.
Yeah, to explore a character that maybe isn't, on screen very much, or you see a bit of them, but let's explore a bit of a backstory, or what happened before a certain event happened, or whatever. So yeah, both of those stories are quite serious. The first one, the IG-88, a little bit sort of violent, bit of action and stuff, and it's quite clever.
Yeah.
The Yoda one's quite good. It has his doubts, which is quite interesting. He's got a little doubt in there, which you don't kind of associate with Yoda.
He's usually quite sure of himself, isn't he?
Yeah, well, absolutely, yeah, and that's what you'd expect of him. And then the last story is Stolen Valor, and Biggs and Hawkins go on a holiday, so they've had a sort of a tough time, in the X-Wing squadrons and stuff.
Yeah, of course.
And they get some leave, so they go to a holiday planet, and it's all quite jolly. It's quite fun. They leave their luggage and they end up, in their underwear and stuff on this planet.
That's quite bizarre.
Characters. But it's really bittersweet because Hawkins is totally having this sort of doubt about what he's doing. Effectively, he's killing lots of people. And he's kind of thinking about people's families and stuff while he's on his holiday, so he's not entirely settled.
Of course.
That makes it a nice little bittersweet story.
Yeah, that's an interesting spin on it, because obviously Rebels. It's something that I sort of recognise. It's a narrative that gets discussed in the most recent movie as well, about how actually the Rebels kind of view what they're doing as quite noble a lot of the time, and they're perceived to be quite noble. But obviously there's things like I think in the new Star Wars, the Last Jedi, there's a bit where they realise that the Rebels' weaponry is coming from the same source as the Empire's weaponry, and there's a discussion about there's a leaning towards a discussion on like the morality of war and actually who's fighting who and stuff, which is quite interesting. But it's quite interesting that because obviously kind of rebel characters, they're not so much one dimensional, but they're not given a lot of time to explore their morals often.
For sure, and I think that probably makes that one story the most powerful. Yeah. Because it's done in such a light-hearted way. It's kind of caricature drawings.
Yeah.
They're going on a holiday. They get, there's wisecrack between the two characters, and they meet. And the way it's drawn, but it's got a kind of serious message behind it.
Yeah, absolutely. That's quite incredible. Cool.
Okay, so back to you.
Back to me. Right, before we move back to me, I'm going to give us a short break. And when I say a short break, I'm just going to pause for a minute to just check on the recording. Is that okay? Okay, so I'll return after this.
Are we right?
Yeah, we're good. And just I just wanted to double check. There's been times where I've done this with Sean in the past, and then it's something's happened on one or my end or his end, and it's resulted in like us losing like ages. So I like to just, when I'm doing it this way, not obviously when we're doing it in person, I can double check it as we go, but I don't want to lose it when I lose. You know what I mean? Just because I didn't want to waste your time. Yeah, okay. I'll just fire us back in. So yeah, thank you. Welcome back. So my first comic was Peter Cannon Thunderbolt, which has been put out by Dynamite Comics. It's now 3 issues in. Issue 4 is about to get released. So I kind of thought, with series like this, because you and I read so many comic books, particularly like I've got quite a lot of. I've got quite a lot of ongoing series on the go from like Marvel and DC, where you can quite easily get lost in what's going on. I thought it would probably be a wee bit wise if I waited until these series were maybe 2 or 3 issues in before I started to review them. Which I'm glad, which I thought was a good idea. And I'm actually massively glad I did this with regards to this with this series, because I finished reading issue 3 and I reread issue 1 and 2 in preparation for this review, and I'm really, really enjoying it as an arc, which I possibly wouldn't have done if I'd just read one issue.
Lots of good things about Peter Cannon Thunderbolt.
Yeah,
lots of people talking about it and getting good reviews.
I've well earned in my time, so I'm absolutely going to lend you these because this is really good. So it's written by Kieran Gillen, who it's Casper Wingard is the artist again, so which is great because we've talked about him a lot of the time, and he was at the Fairmont Comic Con, and actually it was his name on the cover that made me buy this, because I love Casper's artwork, and I wanted to see how he would do with a sort of a superhero genre, because at the moment, or in my experiences, I've read Angelic, and Angelic as a series isn't traditionally comic booky. It's much more on the lines of kind of, Animal Farm meets Logan's Run, with a wee bit of dash of sort of these sort of post-apocalyptic TV series dashed in. So it was a completely different kind of series, which I absolutely adore. And if anyone's not read it, I would strongly check out Angelic, which also Casper drew as well. Kieran
Gillen obviously is quite a prolific writer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Wicked and Divine. What else? Star Wars Darth Vader. Fairly recently. It's just all over the top.
I think if I might be wrong, and I hold my hands up if I am, but I believe this series is his sort of his big series since leaving sort of Marvel and things like that. This is like it was just interesting. I admittedly, and I came across the last week's podcast. I didn't realise Peter Cannon Thunderbolt was such a long-standing character, and absolutely. And so I went back to have a look at just how long, and didn't realise. So obviously, for people like me who don't know, he is a Silver Age character. So what's that? The 1970s, 60s, and 70s Silver Age, in the sort of the comic.
Yeah, that's what I think. Yeah.
And he was so sort of prolific in his day that he was one of the Charlton comic characters that inspired or was adapted for Watchmen. Peter Cannon was the blueprint for Ozymandias. So, which I didn't know, and having read that and then read issues 1 to 3 of this new Thunderbolt series, I was it's very clear to do that. They've actually. They're maybe even leaning into that, being as part of his, the character history. I was just trying to work out how to review this, because it is such a tricky comic book. Actually, it is wonderful, and I would maybe start with that. I absolutely adored this, and I would recommend it to anybody. You said it yourself, Colin. It's getting a lot of good things said about it, and I think that those things are very well earned. In terms of looks, it's beautiful. So obviously Casper Wingard, I think, and from some of the stuff I've read, he's been touted as being, he is going to go places in his career in the comics industry. Another review I read of Thunderbolt actually referred to Colin as a future superstar, which I thought was really, I think it spoke for itself. It is much more if I take it back to Angelic, that's a very stylistic book, and he was able to go on quite incredible flourishes. Within Thunderbolt, I don't think he has to kind of keep it contained to an extent, but as a result, there's so much incredible detail and so much incredible detail in what he's doing. But I think he's required not to distract from what's going on within the story, because the story's quite tricky. I mean, I found myself stopping a couple of times to Google phrases and to work out what things were. I don't really know where to start with this. So it's it looks amazing. The plot's about and again, if you look back at sort of the Watchmen influences. It's about an alien invasion. So LA is getting obliterated by an alien menace, and a group of superheroes led by Peter Cannon have decided to try and save the day. So you're introduced to Peter. For me and for quite a few readers, I imagine this is the first introduction to the character and his team, which are quite a mishmash of sort of archetypes and interesting fellows. There's a guy called Nucleon, who I think he's essentially Iron Man, a nuclear powered Iron Man from China, which is pretty cool. And there's loads of phrases, there's loads of sort of things like this. I just found it quite incredible to just trying to get my head around what was going on. I found Peter Cannon as a protagonist quite a tricky character to get my head around. There's a lot going on for this character. He seems to be his powers were quite strange to me. He seems to be just super duper clever. He's so clever that there's telepathic abilities in what he can do. He can, he has incredible lateral and sort of pragmatic and just multiple kinds of thought and just like Super Sherlock. Like he can see the same situation from just about every angle, including the angle of everyone else in the room and stuff. Quite incredible. So it makes him he's referred to a couple of times as the smartest man in the room. But also he seems to have a power or the ability to see how things will play out by he constantly says that I need to go and I need to go and consult the scrolls. So he has access to a library of text that he studies and he looks at, and this assists him with his decision making. And it's just that kind of it. So there were the three parts in. I'm trying to rush it. So the first part is him and his team averting this sort of this alien invasion, and then spoilers for anyone that's going to read it. So here's a spoiler. Please fast forward 2 minutes into the podcast. He realizes at the end of the crisis that the whole thing's been a ruse, and the only person capable of creating such a complicated and tricky and quite incredible assault is himself from another dimension, and that sort of serves as the rest. So by the end of the series, he's not only the protagonist of the series, but there's another version of himself as the antagonist, which is quite interesting. Quite spin.
We've seen kind of Superman having kind of alternate versions of himself, as an enemy. But it's completely different powers we're talking about here. So it's kind of making me think Sherlock Moriarty kind of thing. Yeah,
absolutely. And so there's so much even within the art, and it's such a complex book, and it's probably why it's getting such good feedback. One review I read suggested that the first issue was very Moore-esque. Obviously, Alan Moore, who drew and wrote Watchmen and V for Vendetta and things like that. The first issue sort of plays within that kind of archetype, and then issue 2, the whole thing, particularly in the story, changes quite stylistically to more sort of Grant Morrison-esque. Becomes obviously the series becomes almost self-aware, and to kind of put that into some weird, and this is the bit I had to Google. There's a whole crazy scene where they cross dimensions by recognizing that the formalism within their own reality can be subverted. I don't know if that makes any sense. That's the note I wrote down. So they realize that in order to travel to the dimension where the evil Peter Cannon is creating these issues for them, is to recognize that their reality isn't as formalized as they see it, and they can subvert their way through it. And it is quite weird. And there's an amazing sort of cross-dimensional travel system, which actually, again, I didn't realize this until I started looking at things, and I think this book made me really, really think. And I actually pulled out my old copy of Watchmen to look at this. but a lot of the book is using the same 9-panel structure that Watchmen uses. So like, there's 9 square panels a book, and then in
a lot of nods to that.
Yeah. And then there's a section where when they're travelling cross-dimensionally, there's a set of panels in issue 2 where they're crossing. Each panel of this sort of 9-panel structure that Watchmen uses represents a different reality, and they're travelling over the top of it. So there's sort of two. I think it's the middle spread of the comic, and there's 18 different images of different realities, and then the characters are in their sort of they're I don't even know how to explain this. They're in a box basically travelling across all these realities. It's quite incredible. I will take a photo of it, but I do strongly suggest people check this out. It's such a crazy book. It's 3 issues in, and actually I enjoyed. I read issue 1, and then I read issue 2, and then I thought actually I'm going to read issue 1, 2, and then 3 together. And as a sort of reading medium, I preferred it that way. It is incredible series. I'm really excited about issue 4, but then part of me is thinking, should I hold off until issue 5 or 6 is out? So I don't know, but yeah, I probably rambled on enough there. Please, everybody, check out Peter Cannon Thunderbolt. It's a really, really cool book, and it's available, I think, in most places that you can get comics. It's been put out by Dynamite, so a fairly big established member of the comics fraternity. Does that sound alright? Is a review?
Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading it. That sounds really interesting. I've reread Watchmen quite recently.
Yeah.
I think it was good to kind of see that crossover there. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, cool. So, T-Man, are you on a second beer? Is that right?
I'm on a second beer then. Right. Okay, so what I've got for you here, as I pour this, is chocolate stout.
So excited to hear what you think of this.
Company.
Yeah.
So here, Glasgow based, 4.5%. Let me just get it.
So, who did you say the brewer was?
Right, well, pouring that is very deep, dark colour, as you would probably expect. Now, a chocolate stout, probably not something I would normally go for, but I decided I'd put something different for today.
Yeah.
So yeah, it poured out like it was like pouring oil into your car. That's what it looked like. Wow. It's got that thick consistency. It's got a wee bit of a head, but not much. But that's kind of typical of a stout. Don't tend to, unless it's Guinness, then you get a big head on it. Not all stouts are like that. So it's a much more kind of traditional kind of stout.
I'm not much of a
smell. The aroma's a bit chocolatey, but not as much as I thought it might be. And yeah, it's completely opaque. Can't see through that at all. Let's go for a taste. Okay, so considering that it's meant to have cocoa nibs powder, I think, in it.
Okay.
Well, I wouldn't say it has an overly powerful chocolatey flavour. It's got a wee bit of a chocolatey aftertaste. When you eat like plain chocolate, dark chocolate, and it can leave sometimes a bit of powdery taste. Or a hot chocolate. If you have a hot chocolate drink, it's got a little bit of that about it.
Yeah. That's I'm still trying to get my head around what that would taste like. Is it chocolate? I've not had chocolate in a beer before. I have seen it.
No,
but
it's not a sweet chocolate. It's
absolutely.
It's not a dairy milk or something like that at all. It's a dark chocolate, ever so slightly. Not as strong as I thought it would be. I thought it would be, almost overpowering like your raspberry beer that you had. But no, it's quite a pleasant stout.
Good.
Yeah, I'm not sure how to describe a stout really. Obviously it's made with, very deeply roasted malt. That's what gives it its dark colour. And it's got that sort of strong malty flavour about it.
Yeah. I find that quite. I find that quite enjoyable. That I find very malty beers quite enjoyable, but
it's very pleasant.
Yeah.
I would certainly have it again. These are usually the kind of beers that I wouldn't buy myself, but somebody might buy it for me, thinking, oh, let's get a kind of novelty beer for a birthday or something.
Yeah.
And you end up getting your banana beer that you mentioned, or a chocolate beer or something that's a little bit different.
Yeah.
But actually, that is not at all as chocolatey as I imagined it would be. It's certainly not a novelty sort of chocolatey flavoured beer stout.
Okay.
It's quite a good, decent stout actually.
Who was that again? Sorry, who put that?
So that is Merchant City Brewing Company's chocolate stout.
It's like Glasgow Merchant City, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and what was the ABV on it?
4.5, I think. Yeah, it is.
That's all right.
Yeah, that's very pleasant. I would happily have that again.
Awesome.
But just don't expect it to be intensely chocolate flavoured.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it was.
That's something I'm finding quite tricky to gauge, because obviously, like, it takes back to that beer last week. The banana one was it smelled very. I listened back as well, and we clearly were taken aback by the smell, but not the taste. Yeah. I'm the same with this raspberry beer, but then it's so tricky to gauge when it's almost not like a novelty beer. I don't know if that's the right phrase, but when you're putting in an ingredient you don't normally associate with a beer, it's interesting how it comes out, because some, we've all had plenty of beers where it just like the beer hasn't worked, and I would always be interested in how much impact the sort of random ingredient put into that or not. It's
yeah, for sure. Well, I wouldn't say the chocolate here,
cool.
Chocolate nibs, etc. have had a huge influence on it. I'm tasting it more now that I've had a few sips of it.
Yeah.
Get a wee bit more of it. I'm smelling it more as well. It's been kind of out of the bottle for a bit.
Awesome.
Yeah, it smells more chocolatey now. But yeah, it's just a pleasant stout. Yeah, I'll certainly drink it again. Quite happy with that one.
Excellent.
Cool.
I'm going to fire into my last beer then, which is it was by YellowBelly Brewers in Wexford in Ireland, and they have I bought this. I think the Caledonian Craft Beer Merchants had put up on Facebook this, and I was just taken by the can again. We haven't yet, as a podcast, worked out a formula for picking our beers past like taking folk up on their offers and stuff like that. But this beer's called Where's Wallonia, and it's a yellow, black, and white can with lots of Where's Wally-esque characters up the can design.
Oh, I know the one. Yes,
yeah.
It's got similar characters all over it in a sort of tiled pattern.
And then there's
one of them's different.
Yeah, one of them's different, and he's a kind of hipster type with a big beard and a big like twirly moustache. It's just a nice looking can. It is a pilsner, which I'm always a fan of. It uses pilsner malts at least, and it's 5.7%, so it's quite a strong one. YellowBelly I've got them on Instagram. They have quite a large social media presence, so you should check them out. And just to see the can, I'm pouring it just now. There's a really phenomenal head on it. Just pouring it there. It's a lovely clear colour. It draws a really, really nice head. Beautiful sort of yellow and gold colours. And what else can I say about this? It just looks like a nice beer, to be quite frank. So I'm going to. So it's I'm giving it a smell. I'm trying to describe the smell. It's very you can smell the malts. Possibly quite a sour. I would be expecting quite a sour taste from this. Yeah, I'm going to just take a drink. So this looks really good. I wish I'm currently using my camera. I might try and take a photograph of this colour on my laptop as I'm talking to you, because it's got a beautiful colour to it. And then I'll part of me doesn't want to drink it, because actually, in terms of what I like in my beer, this is kind of perfect. Hold on, I'm just taking a photo. There you go. The most awful photo I've ever seen. But the beer looks great in it. Okay, I'm just going to take a drink now.
Okay, interested to hear this one. Oh, what are we getting from it?
What are we getting from it? It's very mild. There's a sharpness that sits towards the back of the tongue, the upper bit of the mouth. A strong malty flavour, but then that's really weird. There's another beer like it. I'm trying to think. Oh, there's such a strange aftertaste there as well. I'm having a look at the ingredients. The ingredients. The malts are a pilsner, but the wheat, there's multiple wheats in there. It's just a very complex taste. Orange peel. There was a citrus element to that, and I don't know what it was, and it's orange peel. Now that it's there.
Could be from.
Has
it got hops in it?
Yeah, it's got multiple hops. It's got EKG and Hirschbrucker hops. So there's just a lot going on there.
From the hops, yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, that's just a really nice beer. The more I drink it, the more it just does really weird things all over my mouth. Actually, there's a taste in my lips that's quite interesting. That's sitting there. As I say, that orange peel is quite prominent. It's very, what's it? Because there was the zest of a lemon, and it's when you take scrapings off the top of the lemon when you're making something. It's a bit like that, but obviously for oranges, and that's quite a strong taste within it. No, nice beer. A lot going on. Nothing overpowering. I should say there's a lot going on there. Oh, I'll need what you have one of them. That's quite strange, but massively. Of the two I've got, that's definitely my favourite of the two. Right, so that's YellowBelly from the. So YellowBelly are the brewer, and it's called Where's Wallonia. Quite a strange beer, but like a good strange. Like there was lots going on there that I wasn't expecting to. But from the ingredients list, then they list some like four kinds of wheat, 2 kinds of hops. Obviously there's orange peel.
A mix there.
Yeah, a mix there, and I think that comes in the drink. Yeah. That's really good.
I mean, I don't know how experienced our listeners are about like hops and wheat.
Yeah.
Malt, barley, etc. I used to work in the whisky industry, so I kind of know more about the malt side of things.
Yeah.
And I used to work in a malting, so we would make malt for I don't know, like 20 different distilleries, and there were lots of different types of barley grown in the fields, different varieties.
Yeah.
It's the same for hops, and they all bring different characteristics to the flavour.
Mm-hmm. That's just very characteristic.
And interestingly, the barley that's used for making most kind of malt whiskey, single malt whiskey for the top quality stuff, it doesn't produce a lot of alcohol.
Yeah.
Whereas if you so it makes it kind of more expensive. Hence, the single malt whiskey is more expensive.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't produce a lot of alcohol. Whereas you can get varieties of barley when you malt it and make alcohol. You get a high yield of alcohol, but it doesn't have as characteristic flavours.
Totally.
So it's used in blended whiskies. And it's a bit cheaper.
Absolutely. That's It's fascinating. As I say, because we've been talking about here when we've been trying to do the podcast, like what goes into the pricing and the ABVs and the alcohol content and all these sort of stuff. Like what is it of a bit of beer that makes it a certain price? And I hope as you know, obviously you've got experience within sort of a similar trade, a similar industry, and we'll get there between the two of us. But
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, imported hops, for example. I've seen a lot of beers recently that are using American imported hops. No, that's going to cost a bit to bring.
Yeah, of course, yeah. Of course. But, yeah, absolutely. If there's any questions folk have about the beers, I'm very aware that. So I know me and Colin I'm looking at reviews of beer and looking at reviews of comics to try and structure my reviews as I go. But if there's anything that if anybody listening wants to be aware of, I know last week folk were asking us about ABV quite a lot, so we've ensured to make sure that they're in there. But just get in touch, and again, if there's beers or that you want to try, that's it. Last week we had a beer of the week. That's quite tricky based on our circumstances. So what I'm going to suggest is I'm going to rebuy these cans and give them to Colin next time I see him, and I will buy a copy of the beers he has as well, and we can decide. So I've got. So my Where's Wallonia has moved on to the semi-finals of this. We've moved on to the finals of.
We'll pick our favourites.
Yeah. Absolutely. Cool. That sounds great. We'll see how that goes. Okay, cool. Have you got another comic? Yeah.
So my second and final comic is the very unusual Mary Shelley Monster Hunter from AfterShock comics. So Mary Shelley is the writer of Frankenstein.
Yeah, of course, yeah.
And there have been sort of several fictional versions of that story where Mary Shelley herself has been involved in the story. And this is kind of one of them. It's set in that Gothic era, early 1800s, when the Frankenstein was written. But interestingly, it starts off. I don't know how long the series is going to be, by the way. It's issue 1. I imagine it's maybe 4 to 6 or something.
Yeah.
It starts off with a comic book version of a scene from the old Frankenstein movie, from the late 30s. Remind me of the actor.
Yeah.
Boris Karloff, isn't it?
Yeah, Boris Karloff.
That movie starts off with a scene from that, which I thought was a bit odd. I thought, goodness, that's just straight from the movie. But then it goes to show that it's been shown. This clip has been shown in the Mary Shelley Museum in London.
Okay.
As part of a tour, and the tour guide is taking people around the museum and stuff, and is there's a bit of a problem. Anyway, after the tourists and stuff go away, she finds an old manuscript hidden under a floorboard.
Okay.
And it turns out to be this kind of lost story. And the story goes that Mary Shelley and Lord Byron and Kirsty Shelley, her husband and stuff, were off in Geneva. Supposedly they were in Geneva when she came up with the idea of the story of Frankenstein. They went missing around that time for a short time. And this story is the true story of what happened then.
Okay.
It's brought about the story of Frankenstein. So I'm just going to kind of leave it at that point, lingering there. But certainly it's a different take on Frankenstein from what we're used to. A lot of the similar tropes and things that are in all the different retellings of Frankenstein. The big castles, the kind of stormy night, the weird, helper character and stuff.
Igor.
But it's not, the Igor type character, but it's the dynamic between the main characters as well. Byron, Kelsey Shelley, Byron, and the two Shelleys and their colleagues.
Okay.
It's quite interesting. They're kind of in this big spooky castle. I'm not giving it a Scooby-Doo vibe at all. It's not like that. I'm quite liking the artwork. It's quite a loose pen.
Yeah.
Really vibrant colours.
Oh, nice.
I'm genuinely intrigued by this one about where it's going to go. I'm going to try and find out the next time how many is in the series. It just struck me as something I'd probably be interested in, because I kind of like these.
Me, you like your horror comics, don't you?
And I like the idea of bringing back, taking a real person and turning them into fiction.
Yeah.
Myself,
Of course, yeah. That sounds really, really good. What interests me from your review, just off the top of my head, is that there's a lot of vibrant colour. It would have been a medium I thought would have welcomed itself more to like black and white.
Well, yeah, it starts off black and white, but that's only because it's shown the old movie.
Shown in an old movie,
and then it immediately switches into modern day, and then there's a green and yellow colour palette there, and then it sort of switches into the past and kind of mirrors that colour palette, but then it switches to pinks and purples and there's a lot of black, there's a lot of dark, it's sort of gothic. There is a lot of that, but then when you see the Frankenstein castle for the first time silhouetted against the sky's sort of reddy, purple colour, but really bright.
Yeah, that's phenomenal.
Really interesting mixture of colours. Actually, looking at it kind of in more in general terms, there's lots of reds and greens, contrasting colour scheme in there, which sets it aside from you expect a lot of gothic comics to be done in black and white.
Yeah, absolutely.
The colour here.
That's cool.
Really kind of experiment.
That's really that's excellent. Cool. So who was the publisher?
So that's AfterShock comics.
AfterShock.
So one of the smaller publishers.
I've got from AfterShock.
AfterShock Vault, Oni Press and stuff are doing really interesting stories.
I've got
way out of the superhero genre.
I've been reading a series called Relay that I think AfterShock put out, or The Relay. I found it kind of sort of very big ideas as well, like you say, completely not a superhero genre at all, and yeah, it's a medium that comics can lend itself to so many mediums. Sorry, it is a shame that they're associated with superheroes and stuff. I think I had a conversation with my wife over the holiday when she's like, I was kind of telling her what Peter Cannon was about, and she was like, I didn't realise that's what those things were. And then she actually asked me the question, would you categorise, we're talking about art in general, and she's like, would you categorise a comic as a book? And I'm like, depends what you categorise a book as, and these discussions about, if a novel is conveying a story, and that's exactly what graphic novels and comics are doing, so it's just using a different medium to do it, isn't it?
It's sad that so many people, the press kind of always have anytime they're talking about a comic book, there's this bang pow kind of
perception of it.
Used. The perception is it's all about superheroes, but there's so many stories from particularly the other publishers beyond Marvel and DC. When we're talking about Image, Oni Press, as I mentioned, Dark Horse, Dynamite, AfterShock, etc. That are not in that genre at all.
Yeah, absolutely.
A lot of sci-fi, but a lot of kind of really, really good supernatural horror type things.
Absolutely.
And more of these things getting picked up as TV series as well.
Yeah, which is quite exciting as well. Again, it kind of gets that's another thing I think folk get lost in, because I'm trying to think of comic series that have been made into programs that don't fit this sort of superhero archetype. You've got that the Britannia one, which was really interesting recently. That, like you say, was that was a TV series based on a comic that had nothing to do with superheroes. That folk, I think, possibly was maybe even overlooked because folk sort of thought it would be a comic book TV series. I don't know, but so good. I'm afraid that we have to do I think we managed to talk about between us about 8 comics till now, and without touching sorry, I tell a lie, because your Star Wars comic was put out by Marvel, was that right? Yeah. So this is the second Marvel. My main comic the main series that started for me this week, and I went to pick up my comic books from the Little Shop of Heroes last week. The big Marvel event, War of the Realms, started this week.
Oh yes, of course, yes. It's a kind of big storyline.
Yeah. I think it's probably I read the main Avengers line of comics, and this has been touted in there for months, and has replaced that comic for a wee while. So the actual standard Avengers series, I think, is slowing down slightly to try and fit in War of the Realms around it. I've got a couple of them. I'm looking at. I'm sitting with it in front of me. I'm looking at Act 1, so it's going to be in 3 acts. Act 1 itself has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 comics. So of similar acts. The book I've got in front of me just now is one of 4 that I own just now. This is just the War of the Realms issue 1. So it's kind of the main story, and then there's a lot of tie-ins as well. So I'm signed up for all of these things. So I'm expecting like a load of comics that I would never have collected otherwise, but they will have tie-ins. So like Venom number 13 is going to be part of this. War of the Realms, Journey into Mystery, War Scrolls, which we talked about briefly yesterday. Ram V is going to be in, contributing to. But and then Unbeatable Squirrel Girl number 43 I've got on my pick list, so it is really stretching out to cover most of the Marvel universe. I'm looking at the front cover of this, and it's got, in the front cover alone we've got Captain Marvel, Spider-Man, Iron Man, Doctor Strange, just for the normal standard line just now.
Big thing at the moment, like Jeff said, spanning all these different comics, crossing over and things, which is something that both Marvel and DC do quite regularly. Don't tend to get it with the other publishers quite so much, because they don't tend to have kind of long-running series like Marvel does. And saying that, I don't know if there's going to be any kind of crossover stuff with any of the Star Wars current Age of Rebellion comics, because there was a bit of a crossover between Star Wars and Darth Vader a few years ago, which kind of had this crossover event called Vader Down, which is a few episodes of the Star Wars comic, a few episodes of the Vader comic kind of crossed over and kind of became one storyline for a while before they kind of diverged off again into their own separate state.
It's the main Marvel event, so this will have tie-ins from the whole series of all the Marvel titles, or most of them, and shape the comics past this year as well, like the trajectory where the main series is going. The covers are gorgeous. If I just look at the artwork just now, which has been provided by Russell Dotterman, he's drawn them, and Matthew Wilson is colouring them, but they're just in a phenomenal
detail. Lots of characters in them, aren't
they? Phenomenal. Absolutely, just like pieces of art. Like you could blow these up and put them on walls. They're stunning. It's tying in everybody. I'm looking at this cover just now, and it is like you're looking through it, and there's Daredevil jumping around, Captain America, the Punisher. I'll be quite brief for this because it is just the first part of a series that I'll probably have to. I'll feel the need to review as the year goes on, or at least highlight what's kind of going on, because I don't want to ruin it for anyone that's following along or hasn't got there yet.
Yeah.
But in terms of art, it looked great. I wasn't aware of Dotterman and Wilson's Dotterman's art before, and Wilson's colouring, but the pictures are great. They're very detailed. There's fight scenes. There's a fight scene in the first issue that takes part in New York. So there's a lot of them. There's a bit where Loki that's quite gory. A lot of the bad guys in it look like slightly drawn differently from the rest of the characters. The War of the Realms is basically that Earth has become the battleground for all 9 realms that are watched over by Asgard. So they're the dark elf Malekith is running a war to destroy all the 9 realms, and it's been fought on Earth basically. So whoever wins this element of the battle wins the War of the Realms. It's just really interestingly drawn. Like whenever a character interacts with a bad guy, it all looks quite slightly otherworldly. Sort of really dark purples and blacks mixed with quite striking blues and oranges.
Do you think they've gone kind of slightly away from the usual Marvel art style for this?
I think so. I would say almost absolutely. I'd like you to have a look at it, even just to see it. Images that take over double pages or single pages. So there's the traditional Avengers Assemble battle cry by Captain America that takes over half a page, where they're all lined up together. Just really, really interesting. It's going to be quite huge. It's going to keep on going for months. It's got me quite excited for this Thursday to go and see Endgame, because there's all this quite incredible superhero team up stuff happening, and a bit where I'm trying to find an interesting example. There's a bit where Tony Stark's flirting with Valkyrie and Jane Foster, and there's bits where Captain America standing back to back with Thor's mum fighting off enemies from each side. And there was a really awesome wee bit with the Punisher, who I don't really rate as a character, I never really have. He has a really interesting bit as well, where he's about to kill a child killer, and the War of the Realms begins around him, and the child killer, oh my goodness, the world's under attack, run for your life, and then without even looking at him, Punisher shoots him, and then just turns to face the oncoming onslaught, and he throws out a line. I'll see if I can read it. I was just like, that's quite badass. So like the Punisher's got the guy at gunpoint, isn't really looking at him, because a big ice monster attacks him. I think it's actually works. It's the troll that's Loki, the ice thing that's Loki's dad attacks him, and the guy says something like, "Holy crap, we're being invaded by the Lord of the Rings! Run for your life!" And without even looking at him, Punisher shoots him and goes, running for someone who's about to die. And I was just like, oh, okay. It's just straight out murdered somebody just off panel. I really check it out. I don't know. I went to the little shop of Heroes, our local comic store, with the pick list for this. They requested that I be signed up for it all, and I was kind of met with wide-eyed, like, that's a huge. Yeah, it's going.
Big list, because it was a specially published pick list, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's going to. I think it's going to number into its 30s by the time you get to the end of Act 3.
Yeah,
that's fine. I did it a couple of years ago with a DC event, so I want to try and do a Marvel event this year and see which one I preferred. So I mean, it was really, really cool. Some really interesting there's going to be some awesome characters in it as well. I can't stop looking at the cover, because I keep noticing folk like, oh, there's Iron Fist.
What I've seen from other covers, other kind of feature ones that are coming out there.
Yeah.
Could be complex and full of character.
Yeah, it's just really good. So hopefully as I say, I read the Dark Knight saga a couple of years ago from start to finish, and I don't think it ever really it didn't dip in quality throughout the whole run. So I hope this will be the same, and I'm looking forward to my summer as a result. So yeah, good. Awesome.
Right, so we sum up what beer and comics we. Just a quick reminder for everybody which ones we had this week. Okay, so
absolutely, I'll need to. So what were your two comics?
My two comics were Star Wars: Age of Rebellion Special from Marvel, and Mary Shelley Monster Hunter #1 from AfterShock.
Cool. Mine was Peter Cannon Thunderbolt by Dynamite, brought out by Dynamite, and The War of the Realms, which was brought out by Marvel. What were your two beers?
My beers, my first was Edinburgh Gold from Stewart Brewing, and then my second was Chocolate Stout from Merchant City Brewing Company.
Awesome. And I was drinking Frambuzi by Tiny Rebel, and Where's Wallonia by YellowBelly. I should note just before we finish, I probably should have noted this before, podcasts will be pre-recorded from now on. Just allows us to edit where we think things are dropping out and things like that. So from next week, our podcast will be pre-recorded, and you should still be able to pick them up. I will create videos that there will be watch parties for them on Facebook and hopefully Instagram and stuff like that, and on YouTube, but it will be a predominantly audio podcast going forward. I'm meeting Colin on Tuesday to take part in a Marvel themed pub quiz, which will be quite cool. So
I forgot about that. So Marvel.
Yeah, so we can hopefully we can hopefully get a wee bit of the podcast done by then, and obviously we've got comics and beer to review for next week as well. But we've also got Endgame, so I don't know if that will. I intend to watch it on Thursday, so I don't know if we'll have a special 10-15 minutes to talk about that as well. But certainly next week, beers, comics, possibly movies. Thank you for joining me, Colin.